Over the last couple of years, I've been really sick of the internet saying this person shouldn't have a podcast and this person shouldn't have a podcast. When in reality, starting a podcast in 2025, 2026, and even 2027 is going to be one of the best decisions that you ever make. And I'm going to tell you exactly why you should start a podcast this coming year. Now, first off, you might be thinking, who even are you, Caleb? I'm the podcast producer for Logan Paul's podcast, and I've been the podcast producer for the last 6 or 7 years now, and I've generated just within the last 2 years over 3 billion podcast views. Yeah, and it's been a crazy ride. I've learned so many different things. I mean, I've generated over 7 or 8 billion podcast views in my lifetime, and I know a lot of things about podcasts. I know how to make them grow, and I know why you should start a podcast today and what podcasts that are starting are thriving. So I'm gonna take you into about 4 different reasons why I think you should start a podcast in 2026. Starting off with number one. Number one is that you can do it all yourself, okay? And I think that's one of the beautiful things. Let's just say, for example, you want to create a book. Well, that sometimes might create troubles when it comes to having to try and find an editor, maybe even a ghostwriter, or maybe even somebody who can actually publish the book and actually physically make the book. You're gonna run into a lot of different hardships. Now, if you have the editing fundamentals down and some of the equipment right down, then you're gonna be at a lot better advantage when it comes to making your podcast. And I think that's one of the reasons why you should start in 2026 is because you can do it, a lot of it, by yourself. And I think that's very, very useful. Now, one thing that it does help out a ton with is creating authenticity within your content. I don't want to underestimate this at all. Your personality is gonna shine like no other when you have a long form podcast. Think about it. If somebody is spending a ton of time, an hour watching your podcast, they get a great understanding about who you are, okay? Especially if like videos, YouTube videos, sometimes are only 10 minutes long. This video will probably be like 10 minutes long, and people aren't gonna be able to see my full, raw, authentic self. But if they saw me on a podcast for 1 hour long, it's hard to hide behind the curtain if you are doing so. And that's what makes podcasts so powerful at the end of the day. And when it comes to having to build the authenticity behind it, it boils down to a lot of what some people call the 10-minute rule. 10-minute rule is basically, it takes 10 minutes of content for somebody to want to buy from you or subscribe to you or want to give you something in return. So if you have a podcast, all you have to do is get somebody to listen for 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes is gonna get somebody to be a lifelong subscriber. Or maybe, if you even think about it in short form clips, it might take 20 short form 30-second clips for you to hit that 10-minute range for somebody to actually follow you at the end of the day. Or for somebody to maybe buy the product that you're talking about. So the fact that you can do it all yourself is huge. Now, the next part is riding the new wave of long form content. The reason I say new wave of long form content is because this whole short form crave has been huge. YouTube Shorts has adapted to it, TikTok, Instagram, all of these platforms are going heavy within the shorts. What usually ends up happening when platforms go really heavy into something is something else rises to the surface. And honestly, long form content, long form content, like podcasts, like streaming, are popping off and going to continue to pop off for this exact reason. Not everybody wants to watch a 10-second clip. Sometimes people want to watch a 10-minute clip that's got some great context behind it. And this is one way that you can do it. The next thing is gonna be that when you are doing it all yourself, when you are creating all of this content by yourself, it's gonna be a lot easier to create content when you have a podcast. Think about it. Think about how hard it is sometimes to just sit down and do talking head videos straight to the camera. Talk straight to the camera. Imagine how much easier it would be if you're talking with somebody. It's much more of a natural conversation, and you don't have to worry about just literally, I don't know, maybe you have like stage fright in talking to the camera. So those are all great ways on how you can make authentic, easy, and genuine content. You might be able to get 10 or 15 clips from your long form podcast to be able to post for short form. So those are all things that I'd recommend you doing to improve upon your podcast and why you should start a podcast, because if you can do it all yourself and can do a lot of it yourself, it's gonna be very beneficial at the end of the day. Next thing I wanna talk about is niching down podcasts are taking over. The reason that I even say that is because, and sorry if I'm looking down right here, it's like a few of my notes, I wanna make sure that I hit on a couple of these touch points. First off is, I want you to look at a podcast like Impulsive, the episode that we produce. We talk about a plethora of subjects at the end of the day. Anything from pop culture to sports in general, and I mean everything in between, influencers, who knows, okay, WWE. But yet some people only tune into our podcast when, let's just say, for example, we're talking about a 5-minute segment of UFC. The reason that this information is so powerful right now is because there needs to be much more podcasts that are centered around podcasts that are only tailored around the UFC. And so when people say podcasts are saturated because some of these big dogs like Impulsive and Joe Rogan and Diary of a CEO have large followings, that's just more of you not understanding the podcast game. You need to understand, if I just niche down into something that they're maybe talking about and make that my whole brand, then I'd be much more successful. And this all boils down to the fact at the end of the day that people want to find their tribe. Like, I even break this down to my school community that I started 3 months ago. Well, just within those last 3 months, I've gained over 100 people who are very passionate about podcasts joining. And first off, I was like, yo, what the hell? The fact that there's that many people already that have a like-minded interest in podcasts and growing their podcast, and I'm able to like hop on these calls with them for an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours maybe, and just talk about podcasts, talk about something that I love, and there's people out there that love it. That's all about finding your tribe. And I think that's what makes podcasts so important and continue to thrive in 2025, 2026, and 2027. And the next reason why you should start a podcast in 2026 is going to be money, money, money. And I'm sure you've been hearing these deals about Joe Rogan getting hundreds of millions of dollars and Call Her Daddy getting 3 years, $60 million. There's tons of money out there for podcasts. And it's part of the reason is because the first topic that I talked about, the authenticity behind all of it. But yes, you make a bulk of your revenue from sponsorships or maybe getting acquired. And maybe you can even tie your sponsorships with affiliate deals. But just starting out, you're going to make a lot of your money from AdSense. And then once you start to rise through the ranks, brands are going to reach out to you. You're going to reach out to brands. You're going to be able to tell these brands, this is what I've done. This is how much I've generated views wise for maybe this person, or how much book sales that I've done for this person. And this is why you should come on my podcast to promote X, Y, or Z. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the reason that you should start a podcast is people underestimate the human connection. I talked a little bit about the whole tribe, finding your tribe, but when you are a podcast host, one of the beautiful things is that you can connect with people who you would have never thought. The amount of people that have come on our podcast for Impulsive, and Logan has walked away saying, that person was sick. I love what he had to say. So many people. And a lot of them are centered around maybe not having that thought process coming into it and just thinking, all right, well, we're just having a sit down conversation. Then you have a friendship at the end of it. And I think that's what people underestimate. I've watched this one episode with like First Things Thirst with like Mike Thurston, and he's talking about how like that is one of the big things. His connections at the end of the day have greatly improved. His friendships have greatly improved from a podcast, and being able to even articulate your thoughts is a much better. Like, I still probably say too many filler words and likes at this point in my content journey, but just sitting down and doing more long form videos makes you a lot better at articulating yourself than you would have been months ago. So those are all the reasons, at least that come off the top of my head, on why you should start a podcast in 2026. And I think one of the biggest ways that people get really stuck is getting in this whole thought mindset of, I don't even know if it's going to work out for me. Or who can I have to model after? If all these big dogs are doing it, I'm not at that level. And I don't mean to shamelessly plug or whatever, but like that's the reason that I started my podcast community at the end of the day, is for people who are maybe just starting in their journey. Like, yes, we do have pros in there already, but there's a lot of people who are coming in, they just started their podcast, want to start a podcast, want to maybe even grow their agency to help other podcasts and other podcast producers. And so if you do want to start a podcast and you just maybe need that extra little oomph and a little bit of help, maybe like your clip audits, figure out how to make better clips, figure out how to make your podcast more aesthetic, just like any small things, check out my community. And if not, continue to still watch these YouTube videos. I really do hope that you found something useful at the end of the day with this. And if you are on the fence for starting a podcast, you should 100% start it. Like, seriously, there's no harm in starting your podcast in 2025, 2026, 2027. It's just you're providing yourself more harm by not starting earlier. So think about that, and I really do look forward to seeing what you do within these next couple years.